Welcome to the Better Life Podcast. I'm April. So glad you're listening or watching today. If it's your first time, welcome. This podcast is all about being better in every area of our life. That's why it's called the Better Life Podcast. Hey, if you haven't subscribed, I would love for you to do that today. Hit that notification bell. We have a lot of new things coming to the channel that I think that you'll enjoy. And at the end of this episode, I will give you some links to some videos that you may have not seen just yet. Today in this episode, I want to talk to you about embracing the shift. Oh, y'all know we've all had to shift or pivot in the last few years because of things that are going on in this world. The pandemic, a lot of us were forced to work from home, or most of us, and travel was stopped. We've had to pivot. We've had to shift our way of thinking. We've had to shift physically in some things. What I've discovered is shifting is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And we need to be pliable and be ready for the shift. Now, to start it off, let me just define the word shift. It means to move or cause to move from one place to another. A slight change in position, direction, or tendency. Now, see, I love that word shift because it's a reminder that a slight change in my way of thinking and my behavior and patterns and the way that I do life can actually change my life for the better if I shift in the right direction. Now, you've heard this saying, one decision can totally change your life. Well, that's so true. The scripture in Deuteronomy says this, I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose or make the decision or shift towards life so that you and your descendants might live. Now, I love, first of all, that God tells us which one to choose. Choose life. So we're always or constantly faced with these decisions. And we've got to realize that we've got to, if we're parked in the wrong place, we need to shift on over to life. We need to shift over to the positive. We need to shift to the faith side. So shifting is a good thing. So the truth is this, no one can do the shifting but you. If you want to change your life for the better, then you've got to make that decision to change your life. And the great news is this, you have the power to change your story. You have the power to make the decision today to shift your way of thinking so that your today and your future is better and brighter. Remember the scripture that we go by, John 10:10. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus says, I'm not that person. I've come that you might have and enjoy life to the abundance, to the overflow. So today, I just want to encourage you to make the decision that you're not going to let your past dictate your future. This is the shift that we're going to talk about today. I am not going to allow my past to dictate or determine my future. I'm not going to let it persuade my future. I'm not going to let it discourage my future. I mean, we could go on and on and on. I like to tell the story about my dad here because it's so true to this statement. He was born in 1921. He had me later in life. He's been in heaven for 20-something years. I can't even believe it. My dad was born into extreme poverty. He's one of 6 kids. His parents did the best that they could. They were farmers. They farmed cotton. And my dad and his brothers and sisters were extremely poor. They grew up in the Great Depression. They didn't have anything. His clothes had holes in them before it was popular. His shoes, maybe one pair of shoes, and they were worn out. And I remember him telling the story that when he would go to school, his mom would put a little biscuit in his pocket, and that's all he had to eat. My dad and his siblings were the family that stood in line for food because they didn't have any money. Now, that might be you today. My dad, when he got into his 20s, started reflecting back on his childhood. And he knew his parents did the best that they could. But he remembered the feeling of being so poor that they couldn't afford food. He remembered the feeling of having to stand in those lines. And you know what he did, y'all? He made the decision that wasn't going to continue on in his family. He wasn't married, he didn't have kids, but he knew what he didn't want. Sometimes you may not know what you want, but you know what you don't want. My dad said no more to poverty. My dad made the decision that day, this gives me chilly willies as I talk, that poverty would not continue on in his family. It ran in the family until it ran into him. My dad made that decision no more. He knew that he could either keep living a life of poverty or say no more and go toward that abundant future that God had in store for him. Only you know what he did? He shifted his way of thinking. He made the decision to stop that curse, and poverty is a curse. That one decision, that one shift in his way of thinking, y'all, changed the course of his life, changed the course of his family and generations to come. I am so grateful that my dad had that shift in his way of thinking. I'm so grateful that he knew change began with him. Oh, y'all, did you hear that? Change begins with you. Change begins with me. My dad shifted his way of thinking, and because he shifted his way of thinking, he broke the cycle of poverty in our family. He had a mindset shift. You know, we have to decide, we have to shift our way of thinking that we are not going to repeat past behaviors that are not conducive to the abundant life that God has promised us in His Word. See, we can either repeat past behaviors and wish things were different and not do anything, then guess what? You cannot wish things to change in your life. You have to put feet to your faith and be proactive to be the change that your family, that your life needs to have that abundant living. If we keep doing the same thing that we've always been doing, we're going to keep seeing the same results. Again, we can't wish ourselves out of a situation. Now, let me just say this. When my dad stood up against poverty, it's not like he said it was done and all of a sudden he woke up wealthy. That wasn't it. It had to start with a shift in his way of thinking. Once he got that old way of thinking out of his mind, then he was able to see that God had so much more in store for his life. And he began to work towards a bright future instead of a bleak future. Don't allow your past to affect your future. Oh man, that is so good, y'all. I hope you're getting it. Be better than what is holding you back. Take on the mentality that I'm going to be better than what broke me. I'm going to be better than the patterns that have been passed down to me. I'm going to stop saying it's never going to get better than this, and I'm going to start working toward the better. Listen to this. I wrote this in my book, and it says this: in a healthy family, children learn how to successfully create good behavioral patterns. They learn how to handle negative emotions, solve conflicts, give and receive love, take care of themselves, develop self-discipline, and a whole host of other important capacities. They learn how to thrive. But when wrong patterns are taught, children learn how to survive. Oh man, y'all, this should be an awakening to us. See, how we live is greatly affecting and impacting our children and our bloodline. Guess what? They're watching. They're learning. They are assessing our situations. They're watching what you respond and what you react to. They are listening to what you're saying. And today, you have the opportunity to shift the course of your life, to shift the course of your family. When you shift the course of your life, just like my dad, it shifts the course of your bloodline, y'all. Now, let me just say this. Just because you didn't have a father, or maybe you didn't have a father that you want to emulate, doesn't mean that you can't be a great father. Oh, that's good, y'all. In the same regard, just because you didn't have a loving mom or a mom who was present, doesn't mean you can't be a loving, caring, compassionate mom. I have a friend who, years ago, when he and his wife were first married and they first started having kids, he had this epiphany: I don't know how to be a good father. He was from an abusive home. His father never once told him that he loved him. He never cheered him on. And here he was, I think, with a couple of kids, and he thought, I don't know how to be a good father. I don't think I can be a good father. All I know is what my father taught me. And he realized, y'all, that his best friend was a great father. He was a great husband. And he decided, you know what? I'm going to learn from him. He didn't even say anything to him. You know what he did? He watched him. He watched how he treated his wife. He watched how he treated his kids. He watched how he disciplined. He watched how he gave them hugs. He watched how that man told his kids he loved them every single day. And you know what? By watching and learning and putting himself in a position to learn a new behavior, a new thought pattern, guess what? He learned how to be a great father. He decided, I'm not going to repeat the past because the past isn't worth repeating. I'm telling you, I got goosebumps again, y'all. He made that decision. Let me encourage you. Find mentors. You may say, April, I'm like him. I didn't have a great upbringing. Find a mentor. Find someone that you can emulate. Hang around healthy families, y'all. Hang around healthy marriages. Hang around people who talk good about their spouses. More is caught than taught. Make a shift. Let me just say this. Sometimes when you're making that shift, some people have to be shifted out of your life. If they're not adding to your life, maybe it's time for them to be taken out of your life. I'm not talking about your marriage right there. You know what I'm talking about. Hang around those people who are leading you to being a better person, a better father, a better mother, a better student, a better boss, and a better employee. If you want life to be better than ever, embrace the shift. Decide today, I'm going to become the best version of me. Decide today that I'm not going to repeat the past if that past isn't worth repeating. Shift your way of thinking. Shift your mindset. Shift your perception of life. Shift your attitude. Oh my goodness. Shift out of the limitations and into the possibilities. Y'all, that is good stuff right there. You really are one decision away from a totally different life. And remember, you're not just doing it for you. You're doing it for generations to come. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And until this time next week, I hope you have an amazing day.